My blood turned to ice. I was just about to step into the sleek black sedan waiting at the curb, the one my father insisted I use. But then a man's voice, raspy and broken, sliced through the air like shattered glass. "Don't take that car." His bloodshot eyes, sharp and unflinching, locked onto mine. Instinct told me not to argue. I turned away, walked past the sedan, and hailed a cab instead. Minutes later, I understood why. I grew up in a house where silence carried more weight than words. My parents, all smiles in public, ruthless in private, taught me early that appearances were everything. But there was one person who stood apart from their games: my grandfather. With him, I wasn't a pawn. I was his heir, his confidant, his chosen one. He told me once, "The wolves will smile when they strip you bare. Learn to smile sharper." At the time, I didn't understand. Now I do. When I turned 25, the shift began. My father's gaze lingered too long on my accounts. My mother's voice softened with rehearsed pity whenever she asked about my future. Then came the small slips, a missing signature here, a rewritten contract there. My inheritance slowly siphoned into shadows I couldn't trace. Quietly, patiently, I searched. And then I saw it, a trust fund under my name, emptied. Not by strangers. By my parents. The betrayal wasn't a dagger in the dark. It was a steady, methodical bleed. They hadn't just stolen money. They'd stolen the future my grandfather had carved for me. I didn't rage. Rage is loud. Rage makes mistakes. Instead, I remembered my grandfather's lesson: smile sharper. I played the obedient child. I laughed at my father's hollow jokes. I let my mother fuss over my ties and shoes. But behind that mask, I gathered every weapon they'd handed me: documents, signatures, secret recordings of whispered deals. Piece by piece, I built my arsenal. And then I waited for the will reading. The will was the stage. Every relative, every lawyer, every leech in one room. The perfect audience. But the car, that was their final move. They thought they could silence me before the performance even began. The homeless man, the one they'd hired as a decoy, or maybe the one conscience they hadn't silenced in time, warned me, and I listened. When I arrived at the reading, alive and unburned, I carried more than documents. I carried a shadow. My grandfather had once told me of a man he trusted more than his own son. A man erased from family records because he refused to play their games. Years later, I found him, alive, forgotten, living on the streets. He was the one who stopped me at the car. Now, he walked behind me into the room. The lawyer cleared his throat. "We will begin." My parents sat polished and composed until they saw him. Their faces drained of color. My mother clutched the table. My father's jaw slackened. Because behind me stood the man they had betrayed decades ago. The brother my grandfather had never truly disowned. The man who held the original will. I placed the folder on the table. My voice was calm. "Before we proceed, there are corrections." The room stiffened. Gasps circled like vultures. One by one, I laid out their sins: the siphoned funds, the forged contracts, the recordings. And finally, the will they never knew existed, naming me sole heir, with my grandfather's estranged brother as executor. My father tried to speak. His voice cracked. My mother sobbed. But the lawyer's gavel was merciless. All assets revert. Fraud nullifies any claim. They collapsed under the weight of their own undoing. I didn't smile.
Not yet.
As the meeting dissolved into whispers, I stood. The man behind me placed a steady hand on my shoulder, grounding me. Justice wasn't loud. It was the silence after. The silence where my parents' empire crumbled, where their legacy bled out on polished marble floors. I had taken back what was mine, not with fire, not with fury, but with precision. As I walked out, I finally allowed myself a breath. They thought I would be their pawn. They thought they could erase me. But I was my grandfather's heir, and now they knew exactly what that meant.